Well, welcome. I'm Alfred Lambremont Webre, and I just want to do this because people sometimes think I'm not
You.
in here. I'm Alfred Lambremont Webre, and these are the Vancouver studio and offices of newsinsideout.com. And we're very privileged today indeed to be here with a number of very distinguished gentlemen and lady and dog, 7. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself and
Sure.
your background?
I'm an activist and artist, and I tried to co-found several groups, the Canadian and American coalitions of the Walking Wounded and the Brutal Truth Movement, which didn't get very far at all because of the covert domestic use of advanced and withheld weaponry for political control. So we're subject to electronic behavior modification, torture, incapacitation, and in some cases assassination for forming these groups and trying to get the truth out, while many people are able to start up things and just go molested as it were. And I recognized the corruption after being in a motor vehicle accident here in British Columbia and not being admitted to hospital until I showed up unconscious with meningitis the 8th time, 9 days after the accident. And then what ensued was I was just being systematically robbed, crippled, tortured, and killed by the BC government. So I recognized that they were complicit, and therefore the feds had to be complicit, and so there was really no the charade that was democracy and our alleged Charter of Rights and Freedoms was not real, and I started to investigate things as an investigative reporter instead of a special effects assistant and artist, which is what I was doing. And I guess somewhere along the way I became aware of Kevin Annett's work, and I saw some of his videos, and I'd heard about him from other activists that were all honorable and decent people. And we all believed that he was real and that he was doing a good job of exposing Indigenous residential, school, and institutional sexual, physical, emotional, cultural, and spiritual abuse, murder, torture, surgical, pharmaceutical, and technological experimentation, genocide, and the most horrific forms of human social engineering in human history. And so I really admired him, and I thought he was one of us. I thought he was a brave activist. And when he came under fire from other people that were writing and other activists, and they all started to, his lies started to catch up with him, I tried to write in his defense. And I felt that you really have to have a lot of proof if you're going to call someone the sorts of things these people were and do the sorts of things they were doing after he'd sacrificed so much of his time and his family and everything else to try and expose these crimes of church and state, which he was always talking about. So as I was writing about, to protect him from these people, it just became overwhelming and abundantly clear that he was indefensible. And then I started to expose him and tell people that what was going on. And it was shortly after I met Watsuk and Steemass, Watsuk's son Derek, and I think it was Jackie. Is that the other?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so basically we had real Indians come in and say, wait a minute, that's not the real Chief Capilano. His son would be, and the guy he was talking about, they knew who he was, and he shouldn't have been saying it, that he was. So they came to straighten that out, and Kevin looked extremely nervous, and as I was there to protect him with my whatever I needed to use, my fists or boots or whatever, I was making sure he wasn't getting hurt. And I looked at these guys, and they were really impressive. They were real Indians. I was like really excited. And Kevin just went white, and he was nervous, and you could see him like he was just freaking out. And my son and I kind of gave each other a nod. We knew that there was a problem there. And so what transpired is we kept trying to put out the information he was putting out on the crimes of church and state, and awake parishioners to the fact that they were being manipulated and by these hideous elements. And he seemed to be genuine in his concern to bring a measure of justice to the First Nations people. And after a while, he was saying things that, it didn't add up. So, for instance, I was a juror allegedly on the ITCCS, which I found out was completely fictitious, and that he continues to just write as a scriptwriter in different pseudonyms and things like that, as Jeremiah Jourdain or George Dufour or whoever it is. And he was actually a one-man show, and he was trying to make it look like this group was there. And I was a juror allegedly a juror, yet he convicted the first Dirty 30, and I'd never seen a case, and neither did another guy that was involved with him either. And I was like, wait a minute now, what's going on here? How could this even happen?
So
Yeah.
you were supposedly a juror
Yeah.
on the ITCCS.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden you read that these 30 defendants had been convicted,
Yeah.
and yet you had never heard about it.
Right.
So he convicted people in your name.
Yes, in absentia. See, I wasn't
Yeah.
even privy to the information.
Yeah.
Now, he told Wadsuck and Steemass that he was doing this through the World Court in Brussels,
Right.
and he told us that we were the court because I wouldn't have anything to do with a Masonic kangaroo court.
Now the World Court is a UN institution for nations to sue each other. For example,
Yeah.
for Canada and some other nation to sue each other about fishing rights. It has nothing to do with this.
Right,
Humanity?
right.
The World Court has nothing to do with humanity?
No,
Oh, okay.
not the World Court.
Oh,
There
okay.
there's the International Criminal Court,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's
No, that's not
the European Court of Human Rights.
Oh, no, that's not.
But not the World Court. Only nations can essentially appear
Yeah.
there.
We were supposed to be a common law court of justice, and here,
Common law court. So
yeah,
he was saying that you are the Brussels-based ITCCS.
well, the
Is that
Brussels thing came into it after he'd already convicted the Dirty 30, and
I see.
I didn't, he was hiding that from me, but I was still on his email list. I was getting all these emails
Yeah.
and stuff. This is how I found out that he'd convicted the first Dirty 30. And
Now, who exactly? Yeah. Sorry. Who is? Could you name who exactly are these Dirty 30?
Oh, well, there was it's on one of his videos, I'm
I
sure,
see.
but it involved Prime Minister Harper, and the Queen, the Pope, and a number of people that were alleged.
So what he calls case number 1,
Yeah,
which is Elizabeth Windsor,
yeah,
Prime Minister Harper,
Yeah.
and then it kind of goes on down there,
Yeah.
down from there, the Anglican Church,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the United Church,
Yeah.
etc., etc., etc. That was done before you all, and you hadn't even been told about that, and you were the supposed jurors of that, and that's case number 1,
Yeah.
the one that he says this is our foundation case.
yeah. Now, so for instance, I was brave and selfless and tenacious, so I didn't mind having my name exposed to, and with the state of surveillance and technology right now that's being used by the ruthless ruling group, there is nobody doing anything online or off that they don't know about. So whoever thinks they're hiding, it's ridiculous. And so I didn't mind having my name used anyway, but I was wondering who these other people were and why I never heard of them. And we have to protect their names, their identities. This is just what he does because he doesn't really have a group. He was just kind of making it up as he went along. And so, well, we tried to help, and we tried to get involved because the issues are so important. And we don't really need to get into all that, but the damage done and the indignity to the deceased First Nations people over the last 500 years, let's say, is a huge issue, and everybody wants fairness, and that was involved. We would all try with the best of intentions to do the right thing, and what he was using was psychology and political manipulation, and also maneuvers to get around answering any hard questions. And as I was being asked questions by investigative reporters, around across Canada, and from Victoria to Toronto, and I'd ask him these questions, and he'd refuse to answer them, and ask what any of this has to do with reality, and have all of a sudden he'd cop this this self-entitled, condescending attitude about everybody, and just put up his nose and say, I'm not going to have anything to do with anybody that's going to do this to me, and so he constantly is using political maneuvering and lying and deception to perpetrate whatever it is he's up to. And in my opinion, it looks like he's an agent, like
a
double agent, like a controlled opposition.
Yeah.
And it's a heat sink. It's a place that stops us all our energy from going anywhere. It gets us classified, and so as an activist, you're under scrutiny now. You're in this one of the no-go zones. It could be Zionism, or it could be speaking out about Palestine and Israel and what's really going on there, or it could be indigenous genocide and these issues that I just described. The covert use, domestic use of directed energy weapons for political control. It just goes on, but there's several no-go zones. And what happens when you're a real tenacious and committed activist, and you're selfless, and you go into these things, what happens to you is you end up getting classified and then processed technotronically as per NDAA in the comfort of your own home. And we've been subject to things like this, which is electronic manipulation, mind control, and a number of horrific things, sleep deprivation, torture, and outright mental and physical incapacitation. And in some cases, some of my members were assassinated.
So these are deaths. Just to kind of that, did they occur? Did they have any connection to Kevin Annett's
in the case
activities with you?
In the case of Steam-Ass, I feel that he was assassinated. I don't think
and Steam-Ass being who? Sorry.
Steam-Ass was a sovereign verifier and activist and friend of ours. He was a good friend of Watsuk and
So he was First Nations.
Yeah, and they seem to bump them off a lot more readily than they would somebody that's like, the son of a prominent political journalist, and so instead they just torture us. But they actually went after my, there's nobody in my family that hasn't had the pleasure of these experiences. And it begs the question, it seems to me there's no component of our power structure capable of or designed to deal with any of this sort of thing. It's shut down from a very high level of intelligence in law enforcement, the courts. Everything's completely controlled by these people. And so when Kevin told me not to tell the Indians that this is happening, the significance of a white guy lying to the First Nations people and not telling them something so important wasn't lost on me.
So that Kevin requested you to lie about exactly what?
What we were being to what the electronic behavior modification we were being subject to at the time. And he constantly said he was going to film my children and I talking about these things, and it never happened. He did that a lot. He would say he's going to do something, and then it never would materialize. And if you were going to ask him hard questions, or you had something like you wanted to see him actually do some activism instead of putting you up to it, like manipulating you, he would suddenly have appointments.
Good. Well, thank you. And yes. Would you like to introduce us to who's accompanying you today?
Yeah, sure. This is Watsuk from the Burrard Band on the North Shore, and I know of him, and I met his son, I guess, 20 years ago, when he does canoe races and stuff, and a friend of ours was down to fire the gun to start the canoe races and stuff, and I saw Derek there, and his son would have been the real Chief Capilano.
The real chief, because of course Annett is always saying that he was endorsed by Chief Capilano.
The very first time excuse me, my name is Watsuk. and I'm from the Burrard Reserve, and my father was hereditary chief. He was the eldest of 9 sons, and but we'll get back into Annett. The very first time I saw him, he started talking about Capilano, you know, how, and I said, well, who's saying he's hereditary chief? And he said, Jerry Johnson. I said, well, that's all you have to tell me, you know, because I went to school with Jerry Johnson back in 1946 up in Seashell. I was 6 years old. I got kidnapped from the government, you know, and I went to the concentration camp for 10 years. I didn't grow up with my parents. I had to live in residential school, so I always call it a concentration camp because that's what it was, the way they treated us, And that's where I knew Jerry Johnson from. And when he started going around calling himself hereditary chief, I even confronted him about it. Not him personally, but his wife, because his wife kept saying that he was hereditary chief, and I'd have to get up and I'd have to correct her, and I said, excuse me, don't call him hereditary chief because he's not. I said, the name that the hereditary chief that he's trying to claim belongs to my son on his mother's side, and that's Capilano, you know, and this is what Jerry Johnson was claiming that he was, because my son and him are very closely related to his mother. And when I heard that, and I knew he wasn't, you know, and I corrected Kevin about it, and he was kind of, you know, he was kind of set back about it because I knew, you know, and you don't try to tell me that he is, and I kept telling him he's not, you know. So he got kind of laid back about it. And that's the first time I met Kevin. You know, and I told my son about it, and he said, well, I need to meet this. I said, well, I'm straight, son, but he said, I need to meet him also. So when my son met him, he told me the same thing, you know. You need to get this straight if you're going to be telling, you know, people where you're getting your information from. You know, Jerry is the type of person that will take advantage. He reminds me of Annett. Take advantage of all that you know. He'll use your information and make it look like it was his information that he got. You know, yeah. So you know, when I first met him, he used to get us he used to talk about the World Court, you know, and because of what I went through, I started to talk to him about, you know, how could I get our government to the World Court for what they did to our people, you know, kidnapping us and forcing us to go into residential school. He said, well, let me work on it, and apparently he had some people, I think there was about 10 of them supposed to be coming over from Brussels to our reserve, because he asked me if I could get a place for him, you know, to interview me and everything, and I said, absolutely. So I had it all set up, and when the time came, nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
No, and I asked him about it, and he couldn't explain to me. He
Well,
wouldn't explain to me.
Neither the World Court nor the International Criminal Court is in Brussels.
Yeah.
So, was it the international? Was it the International
That's
Common
what
Law
he said.
Court? Was International Common Law Court in?
Well,
of
he just
his?
said the International Court, World Court.
Oh,
And
so that's the ICLCJ, International Common Law Court of Justice. Is that what he was talking about, the International Common
I
Law
don't
Court
know
of
if that's
Justice?
what he was talking about.
That's the court that he says was in Brussels,
Yeah,
but that's the court that George Dufort was the coordinator for. Now, you, Alex, have investigated George Dufort. Does George Dufort exist?
I think Kevin Annett is George Dufort, and also Jeremiah Jourdain and a number of other identities.
yeah, because our friend Steemass, that's
Yeah.
what he tried to find out who this George Dufort was, and
Right.
they didn't know who this guy was.
No, he was.
They didn't know nothing about this guy.
They
Yeah.
actually said he was a scriptwriter. They said Kevin's a scriptwriter and it's all fiction and to Steemass, and that he was making it all up. And they said
Who said that?
the police to
Oh.
the police chief Jimmy Chu and the superintendent from the RCMP.
So that a
Dragged
superintendent from the RCMP said to
The superintendent and the police chief of the Vancouver Police.
Vancouver
There was
Police.
two different high-ranking
Yeah.
law enforcement.
And how did they come to tell them that?
Well,
I mean, did they have a meeting or?
No, what happened was, we were handing out all these pamphlets. We'd
Yeah.
go to and Steemass would go to different churches and start handing out pamphlets, eh? So somebody apparently turned them in, you know, this guy's, and Jimmy Chu was the one that went up and confronted the Steemass about it. You know, he told him, well, we want you to come downtown and straighten things out. I don't know what it was,
Yeah.
but, because they were concerned about what he was doing.
Yeah, and Jimmy Chu is the chief of
He's
police.
the chief of police of
Right.
Vancouver.
it's
Yeah.
probably relevant to say that the reason a chief of police would do that is because Steemass was a sovereign.
Yeah.
Sovereign verifier, so he doesn't have
Exactly.
the same
Yeah.
obligations. and
Status.
Status. He's not like a typical slave like the rest of
Yeah,
us.
yeah,
Neither
so-
is he, by the way.
Right,
You know?
and what did the chief of police and the RCMP state about Annett?
That he was a fraud, that he's a
Yeah.
fiction writer, you know, and he was a
Yeah.
one-man band, and he was
Yeah.
manipulating people and putting, and apparently they'd had complaints about him as well, but I don't know about that, but he just said that are you sure the information you're putting out there is correct, and you are a residential school survivor, so we can't tell you not to do it. He said, just beware of this guy. And they wanted to sort of nail him down. They wanted to find out more about the information and what was really going on, why was this happening, you know.
Right,
And so I just assumed it was like a ploy to, you know, to A or B, either intimidate Steemass and
Right.
get him to stop it, or just to maybe let him know that he was being strung along by this character. But I do suspect that Annett has some kind of intelligence connection, which gets him out of these situations. Like, they weren't able to investigate him themselves. Why didn't they just haul him in? I mean, it's not like, you know.
So, and was it subsequent to this that Seamas experienced a
No.
mysterious death?
Oh, well, in my opinion, what happened was Steemass, we were all going to make an anti-Pope mobile in my art studios in Langley.
Okay,
And so Watsuk, Steemass, Mia, and I were going to get with, and Kevin, we're supposed to all converge and make this anti-Pope mobile. So it was like a little hot rod we're going to put a bomb box, and I do special effects and art,
I see.
scenic props, etc. And so we were going to assemble this thing, and out of the five of us, the only one that didn't have something happen to him was Kevin. And Watsuk and I felt like we were like 875 years old and just physically and mentally incapacitated. We couldn't show up and do what we were going to do. And Steemass was hospitalized with something like a hip issue, which needed surgery. And then Mia's son, who was 2 years old, developed some kind of croup, they said it was, and had a breathing emergency and had to go to the hospital. So it effectively, this is what typically happens when we try to get together to do real activism.
Right.
And we were also going to discuss, you know, Kevin, or ask him some harder questions, because we were suspicious about it. Like, we kept talking amongst each other and saying, you know, what do you think of this? And yeah, I don't know, I'm starting to wonder too. And, you know, it was evolving, and I think that might be that Kevin didn't show up because he was aware that this was going to happen, number one. Number two, that's why we're incapacitated and why we're being subject to electronic behavior modification, is to stop us from doing real activism while they let the useful idiots run around basically fulfilling their agenda. You know, it's now electronic. It's like a virtual reality. Like they're manipulating and controlling people with advanced withheld and weaponized technology for political control. And
Right. So do you think Annett is conscious of this, or do you think he is, that is, he's consciously acting this part, or do you think he's just a kind of an unconscious guided missile, or do you think he's just deluded and stumbling about?
he's definitely knows what he's doing. He's using political mechanisms and psychology to manipulate people and lie to them in big amounts. And apparently he's ripping people off too. I wasn't aware that he was doing that. So he has to be conscious of it. And he said to a number of people that he can do, like, he said to a friend of mine that he had somebody watching them to make sure he was okay. You see that guy with the backpack over there? He's here to make sure I'm okay. He doesn't give a bleep about the Indians. He just wants to take down the Vatican. He can travel without under an identity, like another identity, under an alias, he said, was his exact words. And there's just an abundance of evidence, and you know, just from talking to him myself and trying to write to defend him, I can tell every time I would go near these questions, hard questions, he would elude them and just, you know, cop an Ivy League kind of condescending, self-entitled attitude and say, what does any of this have to do with reality? He instructed me not to lie to the First Nations people and not tell them what was happening to us. And the significance of a white guy lying to First Nations people again after what they've been through, given that that's really what we're supposed to be doing, is helping them, wasn't lost on me. I figured that he's you know, he's deliberately misleading and making things up, and he's probably like a deep cover agent, which is playing a role in bringing down the Vatican. Maybe you could bring in one world religion.
I see.
Yep.
So you had mentioned that he's also acted as an agent provocateur, even provoking your children
Yes.
into doing malicious mischief for which they could get arrested.
Yeah, he wanted them he wanted us, my children and I, to go by and do a drive-by on the church and the Pope's picture with a paintball gun. And he would have just had enough dirt on me to destroy my family, you know, and we knew that it was wrong right away.
Yeah.
And there were several other things he did that were very unbecoming, but what I'm hearing is the way he treats women is highly manipulative, and he goes, as soon as somebody catches on to him or his lies catch up to him, he just goes on to new people. So the bigger an audience he has, the more of a recruiting base he has, and he knows to stay away from us. And what's really suspicious is that he's never been somewhere where people like us can all confront him. Even though he puts out posters and stuff, it seems that he's got intelligence.
Right, so he has advanced intelligence, which warns him off when there's a meeting he shouldn't attend. Yeah,
for instance, he didn't come to the Truth and Reconciliation thing. Like when an elder or someone asks me to show up, I'm going to show up irrespective of if their intentions. I'll show up like an honorable person. But Kevin made an appointment with...
Sorry, baby.
Oh.
Yeah, I made an appointment with him for 1 o'clock on a Friday, and he never showed up. And when we phoned to where he was staying, they never heard of him. You know, a Central Motel. Gave me the number, and when I phoned there, there was nobody there by that name.
I see.
So I said, well, what the heck's going on here? You know, this is what he gave me. So why would he give me something that, you know, unless he got something to hide? You know, that's the only thing I could come up with, you know. And like I said, he used to get us to hand out pamphlets about the World Court, how they sentenced the Vatican Harper and the Queen, how they were sentenced in the World Court.
All right, that's his International Common Law
Yes.
Court of Justice.
That's what he
Yeah,
was saying.
International
And
Common
he
Law
was
Court of
getting us to
Justice.
hand out these pamphlets to all the people that were coming out of the church or going into the church to see this is what what they're doing, eh?
Yeah.
And I believe, you know, what they did to us was wrong. I know it was wrong, you know. Like I said, I was kidnapped, and I had to go and I always say, I even said it to the judge one time, I said, you know the difference between you people and the Germans? I said, the only thing that was missing here was the gas chambers and the cookers, or you guys would have thrown us in there too.
Which is highly questionable anyway.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
whole Holocaust thing
Yeah.
has been
Well.
manipulated like a fiddle from hell by the synagogue of Satan. So it's questionable.
Yeah.
Our
Yeah,
history
yeah.
is completely
Right.
written by the victors continuously.
Exactly.
And so if you look into that, you'll find there's a lot of stuff that is very, 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 like what happened to the Ukrainians in 1943. You know, 10 million people are wiped out by Stalin and Russia, and that was controlled by them as well. They infiltrated them through Lenin, Marx, and you know,
Exactly.
yeah. So, Trotsky, and the thing is that so I skipped that part of the history. I'm just trying to say that because we don't want to put out their lies, right? Like
Yeah, that's right.
You know, you might not have studied that stuff,
Yeah.
but. Yeah, go ahead. Do say what you were going to say.
Oh,
Sorry. Sorry about that.
no, like I said, you know, and when the main reason I was talking with Annett, because he said he had ways to get the government to the World Court for the atrocities that they did to our people. And this is what I've been trying to do this for quite a while now, but I'm just one person. I don't know who to go to or what to.
Right.
And when he started talking to me, and when he started to set things up, and I said, oh, geez, you know, maybe he is doing something. So I trusted him, you know.
Right.
But then I find out, you know, just by the way he started to change and the way he started to make excuses why he couldn't show up for a meeting, or, you know, and I wanted to talk to him. Every time we had a meeting, I try to get him aside and start talking to him. He says, oh, I gotta go. I got another appointment. I gotta leave. You know, so I could never really corner him to get him to answer my questions, you know, and so he would just always leave. And I found that very strange.
Yeah, so what he did is that he confused in your mind
That's right.
the International Common Law Court of Justice
Yes.
in Brussels, which
Yes.
was an invention of his own
Yes.
with the World Court or
Yeah.
some legitimate body.
Yeah.
And
Because
that's what you had in
Yeah.
your mind when you gave him your support.
Yeah.
As
And
a
when he gave me a video, like, you know, he was supposed to be in court, but it was just him sitting in a chair, and he was supposed to be talking to the judges or whatever. And I'm looking, I said, geez, you know, it doesn't even sound like he's in court or anything, you know. It's just like, you know, like a kangaroo court, or, you know, he wasn't even acting very good.
You know, he's
You know?
broadcasting from the
Broad-
bathroom
yeah.
somewhere, you know.
Yeah,
And
Which
when
is appropriate.
I tried to corner him on that, and I couldn't get him. He just, you know, he always avoided me when I tried to corner him, even just to talk to him by myself.
Yeah.
He wouldn't do it, you know. So I said, "Gee, there's something wrong here," you know. I said, "This guy, you know, he's double talking." You know, and that's what he was doing, you know, and then he was using our people to advance himself in the world eye. If you would like to, you know, that's what I think.
He attaches himself to
Yeah.
high-profile branches of the quote-unquote truth movement, and you know, and off he goes, and so he's recently tried to infiltrate the sovereign movement through Dean Clifford's, network, and also a child trafficking thing, which he switched his shtick from indigenous genocide, etc., blah blah blah, to this other thing recently because so many of the First Nations people are onto him. And the only reason he showed up at this Burnaby Mountain thing, was it 2 weeks ago or a week ago, is because he knows that we're not going to be there. He knows that he's not going to be confronted by people that know him, and so he has to have some form of intelligence to get away with this kind of thing. This goes back 20 years. I know the editor of the Radical Press, Arthur Topham, said when they were doing activism and trying to expose pedophilia and other things in court in Vancouver, Kevin hid in the bushes and sent in his girlfriend or something, and he wouldn't participate, so there was something stopping him from going in and doing what he should have done. It's quite possible that it was his vocation is that he's an agent and he's being paid as an agent of the government. I think Zionism is something that's controlling him because he'd never speak about it. And if you're talking about political and religious ideology being used for, the purposes that they are, why wouldn't that be something? So that's a red flag to us right away. It's sort of like, okay, Kevin, why aren't you talking about that?
Yeah.
It's not. They're not. Zionism doesn't have anything to do with ethnicity whatsoever, and so it's absolutely illegitimate not to bring it up or talk about it. If someone's in activism, they're trying to expose the globalist conspiracy, and we would constantly try and talk about that as what they did to the First Nations people under colonialism, they're now doing to all of us under globalism. So we're all on the reservation now, like Russell Means said, aren't we? Yeah.
Well, Steemass was going to court over his residential. When he went to residential, and Kevin had all kinds of information, so what Steemass wanted to do was bring him in as a witness, and Kevin refused. He said, no, I won't show my face in any court. That's what he said. Told Steemass that. And he said, well, geez, you got all this information, why not? If you really want to help us out, why not come and testify for me? Be an eyewitness.
Historian.
He wouldn't do it.
He wouldn't do it.
No, he wouldn't. He said, I would never go to court.
Right. So you've also spoken to his wife, or?
Well, it turns out that Carol, I met her once, and I also allegedly met one of his daughters, but it's probably just some girl he gave $10 to and said, "Say you're my daughter." We were at there was what is it, the Labor Day march at the library, and he walked by with this girl and said it was his daughter, and she didn't look anything like him. I mean, if she did, she'd be quite unfortunate. So I just was like, well, it didn't look like his daughter to me, but anyway, I just was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And the kids and I were kind of like, what? Anyway, then we met Carol, and Steemass and I were in the coffee shop across from the church at Richards and Dunsmuir.
That was her when we were up in the tower. He had his family there the first time.
Oh, she was there too.
He was there with the children.
Right.
And he introduced her as his wife.
Oh, is that where it was? Okay, all right.
You mean his first wife and children?
No.
Or his second wife?
No, it was Carol, and
Carol.
I don't even think her name's Carol Annett. I don't even think she's married. Steemass called her and said that she was furious with him for introducing him as his wife. She said, I'm his roommate.
Oh, he's his roommate. So he misrepresents all aspects of his life.
Yes, so when I started to look at this as I was writing to defend him about these sorts of accusations, and I saw the behavior, I started to get a little suspicious. So I said, when he was writing his articles to say there's an ITCCS and grow a group, I said something like, and I better be specific about this, and I'm having a hard time remembering it, but it was something to the effect of embellishing the information just based on the fact that it's for a good cause and you're trying to get more people. And he said, yeah, and he lit up like a Christmas tree. He was really happy, like, seeing that I might do something like that, you see? And I was like, now I know you're a con man, you know, for sure. But and definitely unethical, and his reluctance to really to represent the indigenous people in a manner where he was going to do anything effective for them was suspicious. I was starting to see him as a heat sink, like where you put all your energy into something. It's like a limited hangout. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
It's the new kind of controlled opposition sort of thing. It's like Delphi techniquing all the issues.
Right.
You know, so anyway, that was something as well. So he wasn't ever on the level. You could start, he'd maneuver around any question of any significance whatsoever about this. And, you know, I never knew.
Okay, so that's recording. Okay, so what I'd like to ask you is, so we've had this event happen, which is now surfaced.
Yep.
I read that one person, I think it was with the Circle of Justice or something, said that Annett was the worst thing that happened to the First Nations community in 20 years. I don't know, because it was like this blight fell upon it.
Yeah.
And so, how do you both see just being able to move out of this and then being able to do the work that's necessary to be done to stop these abuses at the, upon the First Nations, upon the use of the electronic warfare, upon all these satanic sacrifices that we hear of, all of that, taking Annett aside as this kind of a distraction.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
How can we take now and kind of come together and move forward on this? I'd like to hear from both of you. Right?
Okay. I think we have to be honest, number one, and always root out people like this if you see them. You just have to do what we're doing. And there are going to be a number of videos surfacing now with people with similar experiences, and they're all going to talk about what they had done to them, and how dishonest he was. Like he told STEAMAS he was paying the ITCCS is going to cover everything that my children and I spent, trying to help him, and it was complete rubbish. It was a lie. So we just that people know that he's lying and deceiving people.
No, that's fine. Still going.
It's important that we stop that from happening, and then the most important thing to do is if we don't talk about this, they're not going to stop doing it. So what we need to do is lock arms together and continue to try and pursue justice for First Nations people and everybody now, as we're all in the reserve. Now it's one big global gas chamber. An electromagnetic gas chamber. We're all dying. You can see the deaths going up all over the place. In my union, IATC, here in Vancouver, it's got 10,000 members. We had maybe a death a month or something at the most a year and a bit ago. Now I'm starting to see them come every time I get an email from them, and sometimes even twice a week. There's 2 memorials a week or 1 a week, but it's definitely going up, and that's a picture of the death rate here in Vancouver. And of course, StatsCan's not going to show you any of that stuff. We don't have much time to get the truth out, and it's very important that people lock arms and stand by one another selflessly and bravely, and just be determined and tenacious, and form maybe smaller groups of people as activists that correlate with other activists, because the advanced withheld and weaponized technology for political control has probably thousands of software programs, and one of them is a divide and conquer program. And so they just manipulate the dynamics between human beings, whether they're in a family or any kind of group or administration, it doesn't matter what, and they try and steer them into no-go zones, or get people broken apart or destroyed in some way. And some of that is including the use of electronic warfare to cause people illnesses, like what happened to STEAMAS. And you can't prove this stuff, of course, but we just all had a feeling, including Steemass himself. We all just had a feeling like he was bumped off, and the reason why is because he was called back into the hospital after being given a clean bill of health 10 days later, and they said they broke a tumor and he's full of cancer. Why didn't they say that when they released him and said he had a clean bill of health? And based on that, we had a discussion. Steemass and I and Watsuk and I talked as well, and we all agreed that they'd done this to him, and that, you know, they brought him in there. And it's, I know it sounds far-fetched, but it's not far-fetched to have mercenaries working in vocational capacities. I mean, it's a no-brainer. They're in all our communication, government, law enforcement, I don't care what. They're everywhere of significance, and they're managed through the criminal component of the Masonic Order. The way Kevin is being controlled, and in my opinion, he's working for them like maliciously, like he's a malicious minion. He's deliberately doing this stuff. He's not just an opportunist and a con man attaching himself to different activism groups, but rather someone that's paid to infiltrate them and do a number of things. I think he's actually on the payroll, and that was my feeling after being around him for a year and a half. My children felt so as well. And so did everybody else that I met that had anything to do with him. He's always doing this. He doesn't have any people that have been behind him for a long time. They just keep falling off, and he goes and gets more people. So it's a recruitment mechanism. And I think they want to sort of paint him out to be some kind of super activist and parachute him into other groups, and that's what's going on. So people have to be diligent and aware of this, and take the time to watch these videos and look for the patterns, and also apply that to other people that are doing the same thing, if indeed the person is guilty of being an agent or a minion, deceptive in any way, destructive to the group and its momentum. Controlled opposition is an old mechanism of social control, and so too is double agents. You don't need to look too far back to see this is all happening all the time. So that's what I think. And
for me, Kevin is just a small part of what's happening to our people. It's the this government is the ones that need to be brought before the world to let them know that this is what they've been doing for centuries to our people. They've taken us from when these residential schools, they come and kidnap us from our own homes, because if our parents didn't agree with that, they would be forced to go to jail themselves, And I used to blame this on my parents all the time. Why did you let them take me away? I'm only 6 years old, and I didn't live with my parents for 10 years. The only time I got to see them was in the summertime, 2 months out of the year. So for 10 months, I was in residential school, being a slave to the system, and it's the government that did it, with the churches, they got together, and that's why they drew up the Indian Act, is to get rid of the Indian, take the Indian out of the Indian. That's what they always say. Now we have a problem here. We have an Indian problem. So what do? So they divide and conquer them. We'll get their own people, their own leaders, to work for us, and this is what they do. They're starting to pay our leaders more money, and our so-called leaders are coming after us. And I've always confronted them, and I say, why are you coming after your own people when you should be going after the government for what they're doing to this day? They still take away our children, And I say, what's the matter with our people? Our people can look after our own. Why try to make us somebody that we're not? It took me a long time to understand, because they almost had me baffled, because I used to think, well, Indians are no good, I thought that way for a long time. And then I started looking at it, and I said, no, That's not who I am, so why do I want to be somebody different? I'm not who they think I am. I am Watsuk. That's who I am. This is who this person is, Watsuk. My ancestral name, they gave me a fictional name, Joseph James George. And this is what the only reason why they do that is because they want to keep track of me. You know, they give me a, you know, I get, you go get your birth certificate, you know, you know, they put a bond out on you. And when you die, the first thing they want from you is your death certificate because you're worth money to them dead. You know, and I tell my grandsons, don't you ever give that death certificate come and talk to you, because that is how they get all their money. Every person that lives in this country, what they call Canada, and I still say, where is Canada? And there's no such place because Canada doesn't have a land base. The only place Canada is in the Washington Exchange in Washington, D.C. You know, that's where your Canada is.
It's a corporation.
They're a corporation registered in Washington, D.C. That's where Canada is today, because there's no such place as Canada. What they say, this is Canada. This is Turtle Island. To me, it's Turtle Island. This is our place. This is our home. It's not the government's home. You know, I keep saying, you know, the way you guys treat us, I said, no human being should be treated that way. And I said, you can't even look after your own people because you're doing the same thing to them to this day now. So like my brother says here, we're all on reservation now. And that's what they want to do. They want to control us. And they do a very good job of it, especially with our leadership that we have today that is elected through the Indian Act, which is a genocidal document, and it's been proven that, you know, because it tells you, if you research in the documents that you got, that's what they say. We have an Indian problem here, so what do we do about it? You know, so, okay, well, we'll get rid of them one way or another. You know, they try to killing us off. I said, we're still here. You know, we're not going anywhere. You know, so until they confront us and be honest and tell the world what they've been doing for the last since 1495 when they landed here. You know, they slowly but surely they kept pushing you out of the way, pushing us out of the way. You know, we are the ones. You know. And I keep saying, okay, if you guys own this country, show me your deed, title, or bill of sale, or when were we conquered, and what were the terms of the surrender. I've asked this in courts, but nobody, the judge won't even answer me. He just looks at me with a blank stare. And I said, okay, you know, you always want us, anybody, you always ask us, where's your documents, where's your proof? You know, you got to have documents to show us. When you go to court, they say, show me your documents. So when I ask them the same question, they got no documents. I know they don't. So, you know, and they will never, in my lifetime anyway, admit to what they've done to our people. And this is why I say Kevin Annett is just a small part of that. I believe he was, he's an agent for them.
Indian affairs or something.
Oh yeah, I believe he's an agent for the government.
Yeah.
I think he's been planted there because just the things that he said he was going to do and he doesn't do them. And when you confront him about it, he takes off. You know, he won't sit down and talk with you, because we've tried many a time. Yeah. Steve Mass and I, you know, we tried to get him to sit down and talk to us. And, you know, he would never do it. Never. Yeah. And I can understand why.
Yeah.
Just by, you know, at first I had a lot of trust in him. But once people start to sidestep you and start double talking to you, and I said, well, there's something wrong with this guy here. And that's what I believe. This is what I believe in this heart, that he is a double agent. He works for the government, and this is how the government operates. You know, especially with our people, with our leadership. Divide and conquer. That's what they always say. You divide them, that's how you conquer them. And we are so divided in our communities as indigenous people to this planet, to this country, that the government, this is what the government wants to do, and they're doing a very good job of it. And I always speak up, because right now I can say a lot of different things, you know, a lot of things that bother me, but sometimes I get carried away and I keep rambling on. So it's enough rambling on for this what's up here, because I just want you to know that this is what the government is doing to our people to this day. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to straighten these things out. And,
Thank you.
There's a few things I forgot to mention, but I mean, there's enough. There's enough there.
I don't know if that's still on.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
it might
here's-
be. Their green
yeah.
lights on, so
Oh.
we're good. But
you know, if there are things that you do not have an opportunity to mention, please, now is the time.
No.
Well, did we say on camera that he wouldn't go into a courtroom to help you at all? You and Steve?
No, Steemass,
Yeah.
when Steemass was taking his residential, fighting for his residential, the schools that he went to, you know, and what they're doing is they're throwing us a little bit of crumbs. Here, we'll pay you off for each year that you went into residential school. But when Steemass tried to do that, the courts looked at it and they said, "Oh, you're a notorious runaway." I said, "You ran away all the time." And when Steemass, because I was right in the court when he said it, he said, "What would you want me to do?" He said, "Stand in the corner and have a broomstick shoved up your ass."
Yeah.
He said that right to the judge, and the lawyers that were there for the government, and every one of them put their head down, even the judge. You know, I wouldn't look at him, because that's the truth.
Yeah.
What he was telling was the truth, and they don't want to hear the truth, and they don't want the rest of the world to know what the truth is. And this is why I believed in Kevin Annett, because he was going to help me to bring the government to the World Court, which never happened. And when he set up, he said he was setting up people from Brussels to come over to our reserve and interview me about what happened in residential school. It never happened. When the day came, because I had it all set up, the day came, nobody showed up. The administration up at our band said, "Or do you still need that? You still need the gym?" And I said, "No, because it's not happening." Because they knew that I had it set up for November the 10th of last year, and it never happened. So, you know, this is the type of guy that he is. He'll use you to further himself, or, you know, use you to get information. Like, I believe, like I said, I believe he is an agent for the government, and this is what he does to our people. You know, and once you catch on to what he's doing, he moves on to somebody else.
And no, he's got no one behind him that's been there for any length of time.
That's right.
He also refused to testify or go and help you and Steemass in
That's
court.
right.
Yeah,
He wouldn't do
I
it.
never will go in a court.
He said, "I will never go into the court." He said, "I will never go in." And Steemass said, "Why?" Because you have a lot of information that we can use. And he said, "No, I'll never do it."
Yeah, and he ran away from the court situation
right.
20 years ago when they were exposing the pedophile ring in the judiciary, etc. And he had an opportunity to come forward and stop that. And he didn't do it either. So
the problem with that, me saying that, I can't prove it now because my friend is crossed over to the other side. in July of this year. So,
Yep.
you know, what I say, you might want me to prove it. I can't because he's not around anymore. So,
And this is CMAS.
Steam-ash.
Steam-ash, yeah.
CMAS.
Yeah.
And there's a probability you mentioned that he was assassinated.
I believe it happened. They did something to him that, yeah, you could say he was assassinated. I do believe that because I know he was very watched by the government.
Yeah.
Because when the sheriff from the United States comes up and just walks into your house without any formal
Yeah.
introduction and just
It was DHS,
Right,
like
yeah.
the Department
So
of
they
Homeland
just-
Security.
So
Security,
this is
yeah.
so. This was preceded by the U.S. Department of Homeland
Yes.
Security
yes
walking into your house,
into his house.
In-
Yeah,
into his house,
yeah,
in
In,
Where?
in
Yeah,
Steveston, Richmond.
Richmond.
in Steveston, Richmond,
Yeah,
Canada,
that's
British
right,
Columbia,
with no
Canada.
Canadian law enforcement present
And there
or
were no
contacted
Canadian law
No,
enforcement
that we
present.
are aware of, and they had a pen and they photographed every
Everything.
piece of paper, and he had stacks of them across
Yeah,
his coffee
yeah.
table, all relevant to the big scam and you know, sovereignty and
His
the
computer
manipulation of law and language to enslave us. And they photographed every piece of paper and took copies of his hard drive, etc.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when they were finished, after about 8 hours, they left.
And this is the U.S. Department of
Yes.
Homeland Security,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which violated Canadian sovereignty, tribal sovereignty,
Yeah. Well, from what
personal sovereignty.
Steamash said to me, I guess what Canada, what they call Canada, has an agreement with the United States that if something like that happens, that they are allowed to come up here and investigate it. No matter how they do it is another thing, but that's what they did.
But what wasn't Steamass in his position examining those documents properly? What was his position? What wasn't his position that to examine documents?
As a sovereign verifier, what he
Yeah.
did was he helped people understand that they could be sovereign and not enslaved, and that they
Yeah.
could get their certificate of live birth, not your birth certificate, but the certificate of live birth,
Yeah,
and deregister
yeah,
as
Yeah.
a slave
yeah, yeah.
and become a sovereign person.
Yeah.
So he was more prolific than all the other gurus that are going around on the net and stuff. Like he knew
Yeah.
those people would
So-
be fascinated with what
So
he did.
that was his job.
That was his job.
So they
yeah.
were interfering with his job.
To the
Absolutely.
best of my knowledge, that this stuff, because I'd only known him for about a year, but to the best of my knowledge, he was a legitimate sovereign
He was.
verifier
Yeah,
and
yeah.
an activist and a very
And,
prolific
it,
one.
and it
so.
was subsequent to the DHS visit that he died.
Yeah. After.
Yeah, but it wasn't so much them as it sort of seemed to be related to. He just acquired a New York Stock Exchange
Yeah. Oh, I
document
see.
that you
Stock
couldn't
Exchange.
photocopy on any machine. It was
Oh.
bizarre. And he got that through the Vancouver Stock Exchange after his surgery near the Christmas, right? He got out. He went 2 days later after having this major surgery and everything. He went down to the Stock Exchange because he knew he might not be able to. And he went down there and he got this document with his son-in-law's number, like his New York Stock Exchange number, from the Vancouver Stock Exchange. And he got this document that showed that we have actual shareholders that own us, here in this corporation, which is Canada. It's like
Wow.
dead peasants insurance. It sort of works sort of like that.
I see.
And so he was a significant person, and he would do things like he would help people in court, where First Nations people were going to court to try and either seek justice or to save themselves from some kind of unfair heavy-handedness.
What he was doing, he was fighting for our rights as Indians because the government tries. They're to this day they're trying to take our rights away as Indian people, as indigenous people to this land. To be the Steve Ash would always say. He even confronted the judge about it. He says, "I'll bet you 1,000,000 to 1 that you're not a landowner." And the judge looked at him and he says, "Yes, I am. I'm a landowner." Okay, Steve Ash said, the next time we were in court, he says, before you come to court, you go home and you look at your mortgage, your deed.
Yeah.
And look on the back of it, and what does it tell you? He said, I'll bet you 1,000,000 to 1 that it says, you're just a trustee. We are the trustors of this land. You're just a trustee. And the judge said, no, I'm a landowner. So the next time we come into court, Steve Mask confronted him. He said, before we start the procedures here, we have a little bet here. And I want to get this cleared up before we move on. And the judge looked at him and he put his head down. And he looked up. He said, you're right, Steve Mask. I'm not a landowner. I'm a trustee. And that's all they are, trustees.
And the double pox was that they're a trustee in the court.
Yeah.
Under this form of law they're operating under, which is not lawful. It's legal, but it's not lawful. So he is a trustee.
Yeah.
And an administrator?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're administrative judges. That's what they are.
Yeah.
All the judges up here are administrative judges. They're not, they don't hold an oath of office, because Steve Mask would always ask them, do you hold oath of office?
Mm-hmm.
And, they wouldn't answer him. He said again, do you hold oath of office? And they wouldn't answer again. So he said for the third time, do you hold oath of office? And they wouldn't answer him. So he said, this court is not null and void. He said, there's no court here.
Yeah.
Because you can't prove that you have oath of office. He said, you're just an administrative judge, and you can't make any legal determination on what happens in this court. And, they had to shut the court down because they couldn't prove that they had oath of office, which they don't.
He
They're all
made a lot of
administrative
accomplishments.
judges.
He made accomplishments like that all the time.
Yeah.
And you know people he helped in Seychelles.
Oh, yeah.
All band
Yeah.
members all over it. So he's well known for this.
Yeah.
And of course they would see him as a troublemaker.
That's right.
And so it's hard to say if it probably had more to do with what he was doing there and with us. We were forming a group without Kevin. And that's what you got to do, is when Kevin's get you into these groups to
That's right.
like a limited hangout or some controlled opposition group, the real members should form solid resistance to globalist tyranny, genocide, biotechnotronic enslavement, and you don't want to know what else.
And Kevin would never stay.
And he wouldn't talk about
he wouldn't
things
talk,
like
no.
this.
No.
He would avoid it, and it was very much like most military personnel when you bring up the things they're not allowed to talk about, or any politician, any of the premiers that I've spoken with, any of the high-level law enforcement, deputy attorney general, deputy police complaints commissioner, mayors, Supreme Court justice. You can just go. It goes on and on and on. And all these conversations, and especially when I'm being filmed doing public speaking, the police turn off the camera and turn around, because I'm going to call them out. I'm going to splash them all with the truth and show them that they're complicit to criminal conduct and in this case capital crimes and atrocities, etc., and that they're protecting and serving the world's leading criminal and terrorist organization instead of the people. It's just a master-slave society. It always has been, and it just is being run like as it always has. And now they've got advanced withheld and weaponized technology. They've weaponized air, water, food, medicine, information, technology, and anything else of human significance, and they're stopping us from being able to do anything about it. And that's it's horizontal and vertical control, complete control of everything of human significance to shape the new society. And what you need to do to counter that is unite and conquer back. I mean, we shouldn't be tolerating this. And don't underestimate their contingency plans or their Samson option or any of that, because it's hideous. If you think about what's already on Earth, like 800 nuclear power generating plants, and never mind the munitions and everything else that's been built, and biologicals, everything, all this stuff, if we're not able to shut that off at a certain time, or if it starts to go off, and it's like having job security. You know you're going to be there to because you've got all the information, the code to what could potentially destroy this whole planet for a very, very long time, till the sun goes out. So, I mean, it would be a smoldering ball of nothing, and look kind of like the moon, maybe. So they have the potential to completely destroy us, and they collectively need to be incarcerated and interrogated and subject to their NDAA themselves, and be put in a position where they have to respond to this. And Kevin used to talk about doing that for First Nations people, and taking down the Vatican seemed to be his real objective in bringing in one world religion. And I don't know if I remember to say that or not, but I'm going to say it again, and I think that's really important. So he's not just a local intelligence asset, but rather a globalist intelligence.
Globalist intelligence
I think
asset.
so. Yeah,
Okay.
in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I spent enough
So
time.
so you've seen him as a globalist intelligence asset.
That's what I see him as. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, just like
And-
you know, he's talking about being incarcerated. Like I said, you know, I was incarcerated when I was 6 years old,
Yeah.
and I confronted the judge about that, and he couldn't say nothing about it. But you know, when I went to school, I used to get the strap, and I used to wonder why am I getting the strap? I don't understand. I'm 6 years old. What are you strapping me for? For not doing what they told you to do. We were their slaves, and if we objected to doing something that they wanted us to do, they'd strap us for it. This is what they did. And so we either had to do what they told us to do, or we got the strap for it. And I seen that all the time that I was in residential school. A lot of us ran away, and when we ran away, we got brought back by the RCMP, and you know, the first thing they did, they stand us up before the rest of the students, and okay, out comes the strap. Bang, 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 you got it. And if you did it too many times, they'd get you to lay on the bed, you pull your pants down, and they strap you on the ass. And I've seen that happen where a lot of our students started bleeding on the ass because they got it so hard, And this really happened. And this is what I want our government, this government, I shouldn't say our government because it's not my government. I want this government, you know, to own up to what they did to our people. But this will never happen because they keep living in that river in Egypt, that denial of the things that are still going on to this day, what they do to our people. And I don't like that. You know, so how do you get out to the rest of the world to let them know what's happening? Because they can whitewash it so easy. Look at Harper when he stood up in 2008 and he apologized to our people for what the government had done to us. It didn't mean a thing. He did that so the outside world would look and say, look at this guy's doing a good job. Yet Harper himself today is still doing what they did centuries ago to our people. It's still happening to this day. And, you know, you try and point that out because people don't believe it, They don't. Because they never see it happening. I see it happening to our people, to our children, you know, and I say, what's going to happen to them if nobody gets up and speaks for them? You know, somebody has to speak for our people. And this is what I try to do to the best of my ability. Sometimes I get carried away because I get so angry about it. And that's okay. I get angry, that's fine. You know, I used to try and hide that at one time. You know, so don't be afraid, Watson. I always say, don't be afraid. Because there's nothing to be afraid of. You know, the only thing you can be afraid of is fear itself. So, you know, it's taken me a long time. I'm 74 years old today, and that's taken me a long time to understand. And I'm still trying to understand who this person is inside. And I talk to my Creator every day to help guide me through the atrocities that are held against our people. But I can see it happening around the world, not only to our people, but to everybody. All these big corporations are all together in one to hold their own people down. to use them as slaves like they do to our people to this day. They use us as their slaves, and they get our leadership to do their dirty work for them, and they're doing a very good job of it. And this is what I like to get out and let the rest of the world know what's happening to our people. You know, a lot of people might not believe the things that I say, and that's okay, because you don't. The only way you're going to know about it is you're going to have to research it and see what's happened to our people. Not only to our people, but people throughout the world are going through the same thing that our people have been going through for centuries, and that is the truth. And all you have to do is look around you, and see what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. And Watsuk's credible, and I know people like from the North Shore that know him, and he's lived on the Burrard Reserve, and I know people that live there, and we attended a funeral recently, and he's known for being disruptive in a band which is obviously corrupt and being used against the people. So that's why you should trust people like us, and you know, we're right up front. We don't hide and say we don't want our identities shown on camera or anything, you know. And then and Kevin Annett goes on camera, but it's just what he's really up to, and he's not in any position where he's going to be harmed by the intelligence community or law enforcement, or it would happen. So you know, that's about what I had to say, but I could vouch for the credibility of this fine and considerate and decent human being, thoughtful.
Who comes here on your birthday.
No, it's not my birthday.
No, it's not his
I said
birthday.
it's my. I said I'm
That's how old he is.
74 years old
Oh.
today.
Oh,
Not meaning that it was my birthday.
Oh, sorry. I
Yeah, no, that's
misunderstood.
okay. That's okay. I'll be 75 soon, and but I'm 74 years old today, and you know I've seen a lot of things that have happened to our people over the years. A lot of times I just ignored it and I wouldn't say anything when I was younger. You know, I became an alcoholic to try and deaden my pain for what I went through, and then I started thinking and seeing what the rest of our people were going through, and I said, gee, somebody's got to get up and start talking about what's going on. You know, because our leadership has taken us down the wrong path. And it says that. If you ever look at that, there's a CD that was brought out by one of our brothers. And this is what he talks about on that CD. And the Eighth Fire is called the Eighth Fire. If you ever get that CD, you look at it and he tells about what's going to happen to our people, you know, and he talks about the Mayan calendar coming to an end, and all the things that are going to happen. If a lot of the stuff that he talks about is happened. It's happened today, you know, and that's a very good CD. If anybody wants to see about what happened to our people, that CD you can get. I don't know where you can get it now, but when I got it, it was in a bookstore. Anyway, I got that CD and I looked at it and I said, "Holy, this is true, very true on what he went through as a child, and how he was raised by his grandparents and telling them this is what you need to do." And this guy was well off. He had a lot of money. He had a good job, and he just let it all go. And he traveled the world. I don't know if this is what Kevin Annett did, but he traveled the world also without funds. But people would pay his way for him because they wanted to hear what he had to say. And he had a lot to say as a middle-aged man when he decided to do the work that his people were telling, his elders were telling him, this is what you have to do. So this is what he's done. And we had him come to our reserve to light that fire for our people, so our people would be safe and not having to worry about going down that wrong path. But the problem there that really hurt me is our people didn't come out to greet him. You know, I was the only one that was there, and I had to apologize to him because our people, none of our people would show up. They didn't show up to listen to him what he had to say, and I apologized for him. And I went up and I shook his hand, and he started crying. He said, "It's not your fault." And I said, "I know it's not my fault. It's what was taught us as children by the residential schools, that, you know, Indian are no good." And like I said, they almost had me believing it until I started to get older. Yeah, you know, I always say, you know, I quit growing when I become an alcoholic. I said I quit growing at the age of 6 because that's when they took me into residential school, and I didn't start growing again until I was 48 years old, because then I started to understand what was happening. That's how long it took me from the age of 6 till I was 48 to understand a little bit what was happening to our people and what was happening to Watsuck. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a one hell of a long time to have your entire life stolen and influenced and shaped and destroyed, and to have someone like Annett try to manipulate you and lie to you is inexcusable under the circumstances, being that he's white and he's supposedly fighting for those people that he doesn't really care about at all.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, you've got to really watch be careful who you,
Oh, yeah.
you know, I was fooled by it. I wouldn't recommend the movies he made anymore. I used to. I used to have him on my YouTube channel, and I promote his work, and we're not sure what component of it might be lies now. We're not sure where he's impregnated disinformation or something. So you might as well throw it all out. It doesn't mean that the stuff he was talking about wasn't happening, because the majority of it does, like always. You know, there's a bit of disinformation mixed in with real information, and that I just say that he's not a credible person, and just to get away from him, get as far away as you can, and just you know, sit back and let nature take its course. I'm sure something's going to catch up with him sooner or later. You know, you can't just keep doing something that's disgusting. It's an indignity to the people. So just urinating all over everybody, and that's suffered, and all the First Nations people. It's inexcusable.
Well, all the stuff that I seen that he did, everything that he showed happened because I know I was there. Being a survivor myself, I seen all this happen.
Right.
So what he put on the CD, on some of the CDs, that especially that one that I have, those things happened to us. Every bit of, all the people that he interviewed. And I said, yes, that happened. Yes, that happened. Yes, that happened. Because I seen it. You know, I'm a residential school survivor myself.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see something like that, because I couldn't watch, the first time I watched that CD, I could only watch part of it because everything started to come out. And I could feel it. And I was getting angry. And I said, those fucking assholes, that's all right. This is how I feel. And, you know, this is what the government did to us. And they still, like I said, they're still doing that to this day. To this day that we are talking, they're doing it to our people still. Not only to our people, but to their own people also. So you need to know this, because when the truth comes out, you know, what are they going to do? They're going to turn their backs on you. They won't even look at you. What they'll do, they'll try to get rid of you, especially if you have a voice out there and people are starting to listen to you, like they did to my friend Steve Mass, because people were starting to listen to him. I believe they got rid of him.
Yeah.
This is what they did. I really believe that. Because he was an activist for our people. he wanted to help our people out the best he could.
Yeah, and it's not the first time they did that to a
Yeah,
prolific.
and you know, it came to a point. I don't know what they did or what they said to him, but maybe they threatened his family. I don't know, because he kind of changed after a while. He wasn't that same spunk. That he didn't have the same spunk that I knew when I first met him. It was kind of watered down a little bit, eh? But he still would get up and he would still, you know, protest against what the government does. But it was not as harsh as I seen him do it. Yeah, like I said, I think it was watered down. I think they got to him. This is just my opinion, my feeling about the gentleman that helped me out. You know, because I never had anybody in my entire life come and help me out until I met this gentleman, till I met my brother Steemass. And when I told him my story, what was happening to me, he said, "No problem, brother." He said, "Well, we'll get it straightened out for you." Yeah, he got most of it straightened out. There's still a lot of things that could be done, but he's not here to help me, and I don't know who I could turn to get the help that I need, you know,
Yes.
to go after the government,
And
because that's what it is. It's a government issue here with me.
And
Yeah.
he knew so much about it. Like
Oh,
he
yeah.
was, he was the
He knew
guy.
how to do it.
Yeah, and so he was vital to that process, and that's possibly what's happened. And also to the sovereignty movement, which was picking up a lot of momentum all over
for
the place.
sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And you know, so it's hard to say. It's interesting that he died, and then Kevin went and tried to infiltrate the sovereign movement.
Yeah.
And another really weird thing happened. Like when I said to Kevin, you should hook up with this other activist, and the very next day they just happened to bump into each other at the library, you know, and this sort of thing constantly was going on. So we're definitely all hived. It sort of seems like we're being manipulated in little groups, like clouds, or you know. And there's a pattern that can't be ignored that goes through families. As you know, let's say my family and my co-activist families have had things happening with their children which were completely atypical and destructive, and they just were decimated, you know. And we're all recognizing the pattern. Same as car accidents and different things going on. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that are being orchestrated from the shadows, you know? And I don't doubt that they could have gotten to Steemass by terrorizing him or using technotronic stuff on him, because as soon as I came into the group, you know, other people would start to get subject to stuff like this as well if they were tenacious and real activists. And you know, it's very possible what they did was they just got to him by transmitting things to him, not necessarily coming up and threatening and blackmailing him, but just transmitting innuendo to him, which is what's happening to me all the time. It's like, you know, if you go into that thing and you do something against forced vaccination this time, you're going to die, just like they killed Marianne Hennon. And she was my co-founder of the American Coalition of the Walking Wounded, and she called me up and said, "We're going back into Jane Burgermeister and Dr. Carley's forum."
Wow.
And bang.
Wow.
2 days later, she was dead.
Oh.
Electronic heart attack at Werner Bach's
You
farm
talk
in New
about
Brunswick.
using us as guinea pigs.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that, and they experimented on.
Oh, yes.
these
See,
things.
see these marks right here.
Yeah.
There's 36 poke marks in this arm
That vaccination.
and on this arm, vaccinations, which
Yeah.
I did. I was only 6 years old when I got them, and my parents didn't tell them that it was all right for them to do this to me.
You should go close up to the camera and do a close up. It's right by the green button there, and the reason why is because it's so huge compared to my vaccination or anyone else's I've ever seen.
It's
Like
It's right there.
Mine was the size of my
And
body.
I got
It
one
wasn't
on
two
this-
huge thing.
On this other side,
That's
That-
disgusting. Perfect. Good,
and
good for you.
I got those when I was 6 years old, and there was 36 pokes on each arm
At residential school.
at
Look the
residential
stars.
school when I got there.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
We should take pictures of those and put them on the net if you want,
Right.
something like that. And it's also peculiar that, you know, oh yeah, those are huge. 'Cause
Oh,
that's the biggest vaccination I've ever seen on, but not just one, two
There it
vaccinations.
is on those arms. Yeah, and this is what they did to all
Yeah.
of us that were in residential school. Eh?
Vaccinations as weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
So they were force vaccinating the indigenous community up in the northern, was it Alberta or Manitoba, Saskatchewan, something like that. And anyway, they were all reacting, and it was around the time we were in the forced vaccination forum. They force vaccinated my son, and gave him vaccination damage as well. So
and they try to do that to my grandsons.
Yeah.
But my grandsons, they
Derek wouldn't tolerate
refused
it.
refused to let them give them any kind of inoculation that what they
Yeah.
wanted to do. And they went home and they told their father about it.
Yeah.
And their father went straight up to the band office and, don't you ever do that to my sons again without my permission.
Yeah.
They said they were smart enough to say no to you,
Right.
because they would have inoculated them, eh? And
Right.
what was that for? I don't know. But they said no. Our dad doesn't want anything like that done to us without his permission. But they were trying to force them to get it, eh?
Yeah, the way they got Aiden was I signed the refusal forms and actually had a discussion with an office assistant, and the principal came in and told her to pipe down and do her job. I had every right to refuse the vaccine. I kept him home all week, brought him back the next week, put him in, I'd bike to school with my kids every day. He went up to class and he was called down by that office assistant. She said, go in that room over there. He thought he was in trouble. He went into the room over there. He'd recently been censored and told he's no longer allowed to make political videos about 9/11 or insurance fraud and racketeering, which he was doing claimations for. He had kids running up and down the hall saying 9/11 was an inside job and a false flag attack, and etc. And he'd been censored from doing any political artwork. And I was also in the forced vaccination forum. And so they said, go in that room over there. And he walked in the room. There wasn't one, but two public health nurses lurking in wait behind the door with a syringe each. They said, little prick, and they nailed him with two syringes. One was the chickenpox vaccine. He'd already had chickenpox. Anyone would react badly under the circumstances. He got a massive reaction to it. I had to bring him to a naturopath and do the best we could to try and reverse it. Talk to Dr. Carley and stuff, but by the time we did that, it was already done. Like, he had what could have been subacute traumatic panencephalitis or something like this, and an inflammation of the lining of the brain, and the actual live attenuated viruses are actually attacking him. And given that you'd already had a chickenpox vaccine, you should never do that. You don't vaccine. But why they didn't even check with the doctor, or did they? They have access to his medical records. We're all on an electronic health care database and registry internationally, nonetheless. You see? So they ambushed him like that. And when I found out, I talked to the principal. She cried. She was in tears. She said, I didn't authorize anything like this, and I have nothing to do with it. And then I looked at that office assistant. Every time I went to drop my son off and my daughter off at the school, I'd look at her and just, I couldn't even talk to her. I was livid. There was no way I could get any kind of legal representation or anything for any of the insurance fraud, racketeering, medical, legal malpractice, etc. that ensued after the accident. And I'd been an activist and knew that there was absolutely nobody protecting us at all. We have nothing between us and the King's Sword whatsoever. It's all a sham. So I realized that, and I thought, okay, well, there's nothing we can do. There's no point in my trying to sue them. He will try and sue them if he wants to and bring it up. I would have if there was a course of action I could have taken. But I knew I was trying to fight City Hall again, and I'd been doing it long enough. So instead of us focusing our attention on the completely corrupt legal system, we just turned around and went and did other things like activism. And my son was a very prolific and determined and hardcore warrior, a person that would carry the torch all the way. And Kevin Annett was the last straw. He quit activism because of him. So that's who you're listening to out there, folks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's probably enough for now. But this is too long for the purposes, so we better cut it short.
No.
But
Well,
your story was that those scars. I've never seen anything like that at all. I can't believe.
Well,
and now I know.
you should have seen them when I was younger. They were even bigger. They were more,
Yeah.
But they're not as big as they used to be.
Oh.
They were huge.
Yeah.
They were huge. But I guess with old age. At my age, I guess they just start to, I don't know. But they're not as big as
They look
they
like
used to be.
burns.
Yeah.
And you can tell whatever's put in there would have been, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, anyone just needs to go to Dr. Carley's website, look at, you know, what vaccines really are. It's just a form of genocide, you know. And they're, like it said in the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, etc., we'll give them, you know, disease, and then when they come back, we'll give them something else that'll make them much worse. Or that was the secret covenant, but it was legitimate as well because it's happening right now. So, you know,
To this day, I still don't know why they did it to me. I've never got an answer from anybody. What was it that they gave me? I don't know what they gave me.
I think they tried to destroy part of the mind and the reaction. They tried to take the balls out of the Indian, but this guy had so much of it. You know, he had so much that he's the only one standing up at band council meetings. He'll stand up and he'll nail everybody and say that's ridiculous, and selling this for 100 years for $1 is asinine, and why would you even consider it? And he's just going through all the things that are happening there, and sorry, I got distracted.
That's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay. But this is what happens. Yeah, this is what happens.
Yeah.
When you bring it up, they don't want to hear you. They don't want to hear you. They try to shut you up. They try to heckle you. And I said, no, I'm not finished yet.
Yeah, they wanted to be politically correct. So I think those vaccinations, what that was it was a form of social control, and it would have had certain functions, and they were experimenting on them, and you know, surgical, pharmaceutical, and that's pharmaceutical, and technological experimentation, which they subject Indigenous and unfortunate patients to in hospitals like Riverview and psych wards, and they were. The technological experimentation is where this mind control technology, which they're using to keep us all apart right now, where it was developed under the electronic behavior modification and MK Ultra programs. See, so they were doing working experimentation on human beings.
You see, they did away with residential schools. So what did they do? They built more prisons, and there's a lot of our people that are going to prison.
Always,
for what reason? You know, I don't know, but there's more in there, you know, instead of if they have a problem, instead of trying to help them with their problem, if they do have one, to educate them, or they won't do it. Because as long as we're alive, we're worth a lot of money to them. And this is what they know this, so this is why our people are still at the bottom of the heap there, so to speak.
Yeah,
because they want to keep us suppressed by them, by our own leadership, you know. Mm-hmm. And when you do get up and speak, you know, when your own leadership, you know, tries to back up the government and say, no, that'll never happen. And I said, excuse me, shake your head and see what's happening today. Mm. I said, look at the money that they're paying you today. You never got that before. The government wouldn't pay you that kind of money before. But now they were starting to lose control of our people. So what did they do? They went after the leadership through the Indian Act, through elections, and, you know, we'll pay you now. But you have to listen to what we tell you to do, and this is what they're doing.
Yeah, it's
doing
a form
their
of control.
Yeah,
certainly. Control, yeah, for sure.
Certainly.
Yeah, and to understand corruption in a big city like Vancouver, you need only look at a res or any indigenous population worldwide. Like look at the Nigerian Delta, the Gulf Coast, and how there's one chief sitting in a Ray-Bans and designer clothing and in a big puffy leather armchair, you know, and he's got probably an air conditioner, etc. And everybody else is walking around with big holes in their feet and nothing to eat, and they're just decimated. Yeah. And the place is just horrific. Yeah. And you know they'll cook by burning tires and throw an animal on top of it to loosen the skin off it. Yeah. It's just a complete shanty town. So what used to be a viable fishing village is just completely destroyed. And so you know that's the most important thing that people understand is that they might have wanted to keep us alive, but it doesn't seem to be the case anymore, does it? No. Like, look at the volume of crap in the sky and what they're doing with aerosol, electromagnetic, tectonic, and weather warfare. Technotronic warfare is the stuff I'm talking about, and it's well documented. Its development, funding, applications, and you know has been well documented for decades. So anyway, that's about it for the Kevin thing, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and clear it up.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to come here, and we look forward to your coming back as events develop.
Yeah, sure.
You know, as things start to move either way, we're hoping that positive things will start happening out of this message going out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this
Thank
is-
you very much. Yeah, that's awesome.
And
Yeah.
this is what I tell our leadership. I say, you know, good things are going to happen for our people, and it's not through you people that it's going to happen. It's going to happen for the ones that are speaking up against what's happening to our people.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when our people get together and they start to understand, hey, you know, we do have the power to overthrow this government. You know, because they're going to have to start listening to us now, not to our leadership, but to the people. And this is what the people have to do that live in this country. You know, they have the power to put whoever they want, a good leader in there, they can find. But where do you find a good leader? I look at all the people that run for elections every 4 years or whatever it is that they're elected for, and I can't see any government that would go in there and help the people out, because they're a corporation, they stick together. The only reason why they fight amongst each other is because they want to be able to the ones that can control it. And if they can't control it, they'll go and fight the opposition about it. Because I want that. I want to be number one. That's what they're telling the opposition. I want to be number one. And, you know, none of them are number one as far as I'm concerned.
Mm.
They're all evil. Every one of them.
Absolutely.
They're evil.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
They're
and it's a
evil
charade.
people.
It's a big charade. It doesn't matter left, right.
Yeah.
Wings on the same puppet.
That's right.
That's being bounced up and down by King Rothschild somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and we don't have. It's a charade, and the same thing on the geopolitical scale. There's you know it could be communism and capitalism, which is really socialism and fascism, and it's just all another left-right sort of. It's all a charade, like politicians arguing and then going out for beers later or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And looking at the reserves and how they're being micromanaged by this manipulative government, and the really slippery techniques and the kinds of people they're putting out and training into these capacities is very blatantly obvious when you look at these small examples of it. And you can also look at small towns and see it really obviously as well. And I won't mention any right now, just because you don't want.
You look at our
it's
leadership,
enough, you know.
and they're going out and buying land. I said, why are you buying our land? I said, I'll give you, for an example, this is what I told our chief and counsel. For an example, I said, you went out and you bought a car, a brand new car, you paid for it, and the government come along and took it away from you, just like that. You know, just like they're doing with our land. They're just taking it away. I said, and the only way you're going to be able to get your car back is if you buy it back. Would you?
Right.
And they all said no. I said, well, why are you buying land which is already ours?
And that's all a big scam as well. There is no, land claims and the whole truth and reconciliation. Give me a break. If they were going to give something back, they would have. And what's going on in Israel, which is really Palestine, no one had a right to give that country away either. And they actually say, well, look, you didn't give up. You know, they go to the Brits have never given back anything they got through conquest and colonialism. We have a really brutal history, and it's once you start to look into it and study it, you see the patterns repeating. And the only thing is that technology seems to bring it ad infinitum or nauseum or something. And we don't want this future for our kids and for any of us. And we have to let down our racial barriers.
That's right.
The splits between us all and start to work together. And we can't do that with this technology being used against us. I think it becomes.
What I do
too easy
see,
for them to rub
we
aside.
are, the few of us that are fighting this system, You know, there's not that many yet, but the way it's going, and if it keeps going, it's going to start getting bigger and bigger. And that's why do you think the government is always after you? If they know that you're an activist and you're speaking out in public, and the public is starting to listen to you, they say, "Let's get rid of this guy because he's detrimental to us. We don't need him. We don't need him. We got to get rid of him." And that's what they'll do. And they'll make it look like it's just done naturally too.
Yeah,
they make it look it's so natural, like they did to my friend Steve Nash. You know, they say, "Well, that was just natural. He just died of a natural death." No, he didn't. I'm afraid. I know that. I got that feeling in my heart that they did him in, and I really believe that.
And he said so himself to me in conversations about it. So we know that's how they're going to treat us unless we have witnesses, unless we stick together. And thanks for the opportunity to say this stuff too, because it's pretty hot up here. The torch is like heavy, and someone who's been carrying it for a very long time, and the sorts of things we're being subject to are hideous and grotesque and highly illegal, or they should be. Yet they're allegedly being made legal through the NDAA. So I can be waterboarded in the comfort of my own home through this technology by having my lungs filled with 4 really strange fluid and materials, and then having my gag reflex sealed shut like this. What was it, a couple of times a night, and then after a while it was 6 times a day and night that I was having breathing emergencies where I couldn't get like that much air into my lungs, like something the size of a dime. And then I had to machine a way to breathe and stuff. This is legal under NDAA, which Barack Obama shoved through Congress while everybody was at home eating Christmas cake 2 years ago. And it sounds like the Federal Reserve Banking Act maneuver with Woodrow Wilson in December 23rd, 1913. And on the anniversary of that, there was more skullduggery and malfeasance afoot in the Congress, and they just keep shoving things through. In Canada, if there's a bill that goes into the Senate or into the House, and they don't push it through like Codex Alimentarius, they just reword it, shuffle it around, and find 1,500 other ways to shove it through. And the corrupt people with their snouts in the feeding trough just continue to go along to get along, as do anyone in any vocational capacity whatsoever. They're all controlled by this money, and the threat of dire consequences.
Right.
And they all want to keep taking their paychecks and live. And, they don't want to lose their house, car, children's education, wife. They can't afford a divorce lawyer once they're blacklisted and they're being sued or manipulated in this legal system. So they're completely under their control. Yeah. And they all keep their noses down and play their respective vocational roles in this diabolical agenda. And I feel that it's really obvious that they've been desensitized, indoctrinated, brainwashed, compartmentalized, manipulated, and mind-controlled into doing their vocational component of what is a really diabolical agenda. And you can see this now in the bans as well, the way they're installing these little puppet governments that they can manipulate and steal from everybody on the reserve.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like I always tell them, bullshit walks. I mean, money talks, bullshit walks, and that's what it is. You know, as long as there's money involved, they got their hand right there. They're grabbing.
They just
and they want
more.
more.
And I'd just like to say that we verified through an interview. This happened to Melanie Richan of the UCatch office in Brussels. She has the exact. Well, not
choking thing, and they did it to Magnus too, on the border. Yeah. So, I think that was a very telling thing. Like what they're using it. Some people confuse it with tape Morgellons, and it's not. Morgellons is like calling every vehicle a snowmobile or a skidoo, actually. Yeah. And really, there's a myriad of advanced biological and genetic warfare, which is activated with Technotronic, the Technotronic grid, the smart grid and supercomputer and the web, the net, is a trap in which we get data mined and then classified. And then what happens is we're all being classified like in pre-World War II Russia or Germany right now. And then they can basically turn you off from outer space. They can torture, sleep deprive, manipulate, mentally and physically incapacitate and mutilate and ultimately assassinate anyone they want. And they've made it
Yeah.
legal so that it corresponds with legislation. And I was talking to Alan Watt today on the phone about the fact that we can prove that they said they were going to use all this, but because he's read all the dry literature and the books in which they bragged about it. And they actually talked to one another, and they were bringing the us up to heat slowly, like a frog in a pot,
Yeah.
so that you wouldn't jump out and panic. And we know that we can prove this is going on.
Yeah.
There's too many people coming forward with similar stories and stuff, and you see the patterns and repeating all over the place. So Melanie's yet another case of someone being asphyxiated like that. But I'd like to talk to her about that. Maybe you can tell her what I said and how they snapped shut my gag reflex.
Yeah.
And then we'd go into this weird, like 1 hour of trying to get just a little bit of, get stuff out of my lungs. I had to do lung pumping. And I would not go to a hospital. In fact, I requested that no one would phone an ambulance, and I said, do not bring me there. And if I die, I wanted to be put up in a forest against a tree with a jug of wine, maybe. Maybe a little hippie stick or something, and just leave me in the, let the animals do whatever they want. They'd have a good organic feed. And I didn't want to have the indignity done to me that they do to the cadavers once they get them in for forensic examination. And the hideous things they would probably do with my DNA. I'd prefer it if there wasn't a piece of me bigger than an atom. Rather than go in there.
You'll be deformed.
Oh,
you're
terribly.
They would operate on your head. They go through your head to make you see, wow. And when they do, they take everything off, and then they put it back on after they've gone into your head.
Oh, they probably reanimate you.
Oh, yeah, and when you see them in the coffin, you see that they're all bloated, they're not even the same person. You can't even recognize them because this is what they do to you, eh?
No, it's
they,
just
they
disgusting.
do that to you.
Yeah, and they make
very
jokes.
disgusting.
They're sick.
Yeah.
The jokes that go around. I know a coroner, so it's.
I see.
I hear it all. I mean, you don't want to go there. So, but this is much bigger than one of us. It's much bigger than an individual and their experiences. This is about the future of all children. I jump in front of a transport truck to save a 2-year-old child if I knew I could toss it to safety. Yeah. And that's just one child, to give a child a chance. This is about 2 billion children.
Yeah.
This is about all the people that have suffered as they went through this agenda to try and control us and use us like some kind of booster rocket, like Alan Watt says. And basically that they've had a big enough population that they could get a certain section of it as a vocational instrument to get them this far. And they've used that and now we're redundant. And so they've collapsed the economy, and they're collapsing society and making it a post-industrial continent. And austerity measures, it's now people are being arrested for feeding homeless people that they created with the securities and loan scandals and all these other insurance fraud and racketeering, etc. Medical malpractice, it just goes on and on. So we have to stand together. And I wouldn't tolerate a police officer telling me not to feed a homeless person.
Really?
Man, we'd be not on, no more. They're treasonous. They're not protecting and serving us, but rather the world's leading criminal and terrorist organization, and they are guilty of it. And there's no doubt. I've seen the RCMP, which I call the rotten Canadian Mounted Police. I've seen them drop the ball on and actually be complicit to pedophilia, like the Byron Pryor case. If you look into that, it's clear. And Byron was standing on Parliament Hill with a sandwich board saying that T. Alex Hickman, Chief Justice of Newfoundland, was a pedophile and had raped and impregnated his 11-year-old sister well over 40 years beforehand, and yet there was no investigation. What a coincidence. That just keeps going right across Canada from one coast to the next and down into the States and on and on. Look at the island of Jersey outside of UK, and who's there? And I know you know about this child trafficking stuff, and it's all very real, unfortunately. So the stuff we talk about does sound really sensational and unreal, but it is very tangible, very real. And here's living proof. I mean, just seeing those 2 vaccination scars.
Sure.
That's
And so perhaps you can come at future.
Yeah, sure.
On future occasions, and we can start to get into that, because one of the things that we did is that the directors of Exopolitics TV met.
Yeah.
That's my wife Jerry and I.
Right, right.
We met Jerry. We met today, and we decided that we could not continue broadcasting the videos of Kevin Annett because
Yeah.
we didn't know what part of it was real and
Yeah,
what
exactly.
part wasn't.
It's what we just said.
But
Yeah.
that if we had subsequent verification of the abuses that he was talking about,
Mhm.
that we would broadcast that. So
Good.
we'd like to invite you to come at subsequent interviews
Yeah, well, we've got a lot
and
of
just
people.
really bring
Sure.
that evidence so that we can just bring that out.
Yeah, good for you.
And
Yeah,
fill
excellent. Good for you.
what we took down today,
Right.
we'll put out from authentic witnesses.
Well, thanks to him for
Oh, totally.
giving us the opportunity that
Yeah.
he's given us to actually
Yeah.
expose it.
Yeah.
Because he certainly did draw a lot of attention to it. So
Yeah.
whether he's a double agent or not, it still is good for us because it's
Yeah.
given us an opportunity to collect other people and from different reserves and bands and go forward with that. And there's a lot of abuse happening to them right now. You should have seen the fishing fiasco recently, for instance. It's just
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to make a mask of Wozak, and he's going to have his long gray hair, and we're going to put it up across at his house, and he's going to be going. Mine is more of a Scottish. But we've heard inherited those. Well, thank you for the opportunity to come and do this, and it was
Totally,
really good.
totally.
It was nice.
And so until our next occasion,
yes,
as witnesses and with evidence.
yes,
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. That was
Good.
awesome. Thank you.
Let's just get this.
that looks like some of my nephew's work up there drawing
Yeah.
art. I don't know who, but it looks something like
I don't think that one's signed on the front, but it is.
Yeah,
beautiful.